let's all admit it, we know readers judge a book by its cover. So what makes good book cover design? That is exactly what we're talking about in today's video. Today I'm going to be designing this book cover with you guys. You guys can watch the time lapse as I design it step by step in Photoshop. And as I design it, I will also be talking to you about the 5 rules of graphic design, specifically design when it comes to book covers that you need to follow when you're designing your book cover. These are some of the rules and principles I talk about in my book cover design courses. So if you watch this video and you're super interested in designing your own book cover, make sure to check out my courses. It's actually a 3-course bundle. You can buy it as a bundle or buy individually. The first course is just to teach you how to use Photoshop. The second course teaches you typography and book cover design. So if you hire an illustrator to illustrate your cover, but then you need to add in the typography and format the wrap. And then the third course is a course that teaches you how to design a book cover from scratch, taking stock photos and turning them into a finished, beautiful book cover. That will be linked down below, but today we're just going to be watching a book cover design process step by step and talking about some of the most important principles that you should be following when it comes to cover design. Even if you don't plan on designing the cover yourself, but you do plan on hiring someone to design your cover, please still watch this video because I think it's important that authors understand some principles of book cover design, because even though you are hiring someone to design your book cover, at the end of the day, they're going to do what you tell them to. So if you still want a beautiful book cover that's great for readers, it's important to understand some of these principles. That way you can work together with your designer rather than feeling like you're working against them. Hello everyone, my name is Mandy. I'm an author, the creator of the Book Launch Planner series, and I also have courses on book cover design and book formatting. I make weekly videos on the business of being an author, so if that sounds good to you, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification icon so you never miss a new upload. You can also join as a YouTube member to get early access to videos as well as behind the scenes content. Rule number 1 when it comes to designing book covers is know the mood you want to create. So when you first start off your book cover design process, there's some brainstorming you're going to be doing. In this case, I may have just finished reading Fourth Wing, and so I'm a little bit inspired by dragons right now, so we are going to make a dragon inspired book cover. But I also knew that the mood was going to be dark, moody, and it was going to be dragons. So that is what you're going to see in the design. So you're going to want to find your appropriate stock photos. I personally try to find all my stock photos before I start the cover design process, but sometimes you may need to find alternatives as you go through it, but I try to piece things together before I get started. Rule number 2 is you want a clear color palette. Now, when it comes to what your color palette should look like, you definitely want to look at other books in your genre for inspiration. For example, if you're designing a fantasy book cover, you want to look at other fantasy book covers and see what they are looking like. Are they dark and moody? Yes. Whereas romance book covers are bright and pastel. Totally different things. You're going to be creating a mood and a vibe just off of the colors that you choose. In my case, I ended up going with like this sort of dark purple and red color palette that I had a lot of fun designing with. And this is a similar color palette that you would see for other fantasy books, which is what we want. We want to blend in with other books in our genre, but then have the design itself be the thing that makes us stand out from the crowd. Another rule you always want to follow is that less is more. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen new cover designers design a cover and it just looks like there's too much going on. Or sometimes if a client comes to me and I'm designing their book cover, they send me like a little mock-up they created, and the mock-up is just cluttered with a million different things going on. They're trying to recreate a scene from their book on the book cover, and it just doesn't work, because when it comes to graphic design, truly less is more. If you have too much going on, the reader's not even going to know what to look at, and they're going to see it and just see a mess and look away and not bother trying to figure out what's happening. Newbie designers are especially prone to making cluttered covers because they're trying to show off all these new skills that they've learned, and they want to be like, oh, I learned this new feature in Photoshop, let me show off how I can do it. But your book cover is not the place to do it, because there's this balance you need to create in your cover design, and sometimes balance involves having a significant amount of white space. And white space is not just literal white spots on your design, it's just blank, empty spots in your design where you purposely left a spot kind of empty and boring because you want the attention to be brought to something else in the design. The true pros of cover design: create complex covers that look simple at first, but the more you look at them, the more you realize how much work and effort probably went into that design. And rule number 4 of cover design is that you want to create contrast. You don't want an image that's flat, but especially you want to create contrast in your text. And the best way to explain contrast in a design is just to have something that pops out from the design. So if you have a very dark black book cover, you don't want dark gray text because there's just not enough contrast there for that text to pop out and be readable. Because you want to keep in mind that most readers, if they're shopping on something like Amazon, they're only going to see a very small thumbnail of your book cover. So if you don't have enough contrast, it's just going to look like a blob of whatever color your book is, instead of being able to read the book title. So contrast, it goes for the whole design, but especially for your text to make sure it pops out against the background. Because at the end of the day, text should be readable. It's not just another fancy thing on your cover. It still needs to relay the message of the book's title. And last but certainly not least, in fact, I would say this is the most important rule of cover design, is making sure your genre is clear. Upon first glance of your finished book cover, it should be pretty obvious what the genre of your book cover is. Now, it should at least be clear of what your overarching genre is. You know, sometimes there's subgenres within genres, and those kind of have some overlap in terms of what the cover looks like. But if I look at your cover and I think, oh, it's a romance, and it only lightly has romance in it, it should not be looking like a romance novel. And truly, the only way, the best way to learn about what your book cover should look like in accordance to its genre is just to study other book covers in your genre. You want to go to the bestseller pages on Amazon, the bestseller pages of Barnes & Noble. You want to go to the bookstore and see what book covers are looking like. And sometimes you have to keep in mind that you can't always look towards the super amazing bestsellers like Fourth Wing and all those really high-selling books. You want to look at the more average bestsellers. Those are the books that have the look of cover that you're probably striving for. Anyways, this is our finished book cover. I hope you guys love it. If you want to learn more about book cover design, make sure to check out my courses. I also have a playlist here on YouTube all about book cover design. You can watch more speed design tutorials, or you can watch me talk about the design process as well. Otherwise, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to give it a thumbs up, comment down below, and I'll see you all next week.